One of the best ways to learn more about culture is to visit. So that's why we decided to take our family traveling for a year. First up was the Marshall Islands. Our first stop was Ilook Atoll, which is the northern part of the Arctic chain. It took us about 4 days of sailing against the wind to get here. These atolls are not traveled to that often, so some of the charts and GPS are way off.
Knowing that the charts might not be accurate, we try to enter all new atolls and the passes during the day so we can enter safely. One of the first things we noticed about Ilook was the number of outrigger sailing canoes going up and down the lagoon. And as we anchored, this couple passed us by. Another thing that we noticed was that every afternoon, the boys would come out with these little outrigger sailing canoes and practice sailing them in the protected waters of this little bay. We asked the locals if this was in preparation for Manit Day activities, and they said no. Sailing is a way of life in Ilook, and every boy learns to sail. My family paddled in because they wanted to get a closer look, and Alonzo really wanted to sail one of those little outriggers on his own. While we were on Ilook, I learned that the Eroge, Winta Alfred, is actually the uncle of Kwajalein Junior Senior High School graduates Tanya and Dash Alfred. We got to chat with him a little bit, and he told us that one of the biggest things that they need in Ilook is the materials to build sailing canoes. They used to have a lot more outriggers out in the lagoon, he said, but the cost of materials has gone up so much over the past few years, they just can't afford to build as many as they used to. So if any quad groups are looking for fundraising opportunities, getting funds and getting materials out to the people of Ilook Atoll would be greatly appreciated. These are some of the biggest coconut crabs I've ever seen, and I didn't notice them at first. They were on the buildings, up in trees, and they were kind of lashed on so they couldn't get away. And what had happened was there had been a funeral, and this was the last day of the funeral, and then they were going to have a big dinner after. And so these coconut crabs for the dinner, and they didn't want them to get away. But yeah, biggest coconut crabs that we had seen. So these guys were preparing the water that they're going to boil the crabs in. And if you notice, take a look, there's coconuts there, right? So coconut is a big part of outer island life. They use it for firewood, they use it to make money by producing copra. Inside the meat is fed to chickens and all the animals, really. So coconut is a big part of outer island life. School wasn't in session yet, but we got to visit the campus. And the teachers said that one of their biggest needs was bigger items like solar panels so that they can power the electrical things that they do have. So, of course, I gave them an application for the YYWC education grants. But if anyone's looking for fundraising opportunities, schools in the outer islands could use help. On our last day at Ilook, we got to try some wax apples which grow there. They're tart, but pretty refreshing, although only Ezekiel of my children liked it. Peter, our new friend, took us to his house to show us the amimono, or handicrafts, that his sister and his mom made. Did you know that 90% of the women on Ilook produce amimono? Of course, we had to buy one. The next stop of our trip was Maloelap Atoll, which is south of Ilook, but still in the Arctic chain. School was in session in Maloelap Atoll, so we took Miss Dean's Parker's markers and read it to the kids there. I think they enjoyed it. Many of the women in Maloelap Atoll also make amimono. This is our friend Doris, who made jewelry for our whole family. Creative use of an old broken desk to hold a solar panel. Another thing that's hard to get in the outer islands is new clothes, because there aren't really stores. So we had gathered a bunch of donations and given them to the school the day before. And when we came back the next day, we spotted a George Seitz shirt. day, some friends decided to come visit us on Cherokee. So they paddled out in ingenious little rafts built of halved out buoys and using their flip-flops as paddles. The tide made it hard for our friends to paddle back to shore, so we gave them a ride in the dinghy, and Delina convinced us to go find the puppies one last time. There are many different types of architecture in the outer islands. Some are concrete buildings, others are made more traditionally. This is a little kind of kitchen outside area where Delina was visiting with the puppies. Another creative use of buoys that float up on shore is splitting them in half and using them for sinks. And our last outer island for this trip was Maloelap Atoll, just south of Maloelap. On our walk through this island, we saw creative basketball hoops, as well as a place where they usually farm clams or sometimes fish.
Here at Tobal, I don't know about the pronunciation, Island, our atoll, the anchorage is really deep. So we're at like 40 to 50 feet, depending if we're over a coral head or not. But it's interesting because the reef goes like right up for the most part throughout the whole stretch. And the copra boat is here, picking up copra.
Besides making amimono, the other main economic activity of the outer islands is producing copra, which is those dried coconuts that you saw. They have to put them all into those big bags that you see the men carrying, and then each bag can bring them between $60 or $70 depending on the market for it. You enjoyed this tour of the outer islands, and I hope that at some point in your life you might be able to get out there too, so you can see what life is like in a different part of the Marshalls. Happy Manit Day!